There are two ways interfaces communicate with the host computer. Some interfaces are just plug and play, while others require dedicated software drivers to be installed, at least for full functionality. Smaller interfaces are typically plug and play devices. That means they need no special software drivers to operate. They are recognized by the operating system when connected and show up in any DAW preference lists where they can be assigned as the I/O device for that workstation. Another common, somewhat more technical term for this that you might see in spec sheets is class compliant. A computer OS includes standard drivers for various classes of, say, USB peripherals, like video devices, storage devices, printers, and audio devices. These built-in drivers are code included with the OS that recognizes a certain type of hardware device and allows it to be used with the computer for its intended purpose, simply by plugging the device in. That's where the more common plug-and-play description comes from. Plug-and-play, or class-compliant operation, is commonly found on smaller interfaces, especially the smallest models with the simplest feature sets that usually provide basic I/O without any complicated bells and whistles or specialized features. If a small interface is class-compliant, that should be mentioned in the specs somewhere, either by the technical term or the more user-friendly plug-and-play description. A plug-and-play audio interface will still need to be configured in preference panels. For example, to be used by the Mac OS for a basic computer I/O, the interface would be selected in the Sound Preference panel. More to the point, for studio use, a class-compliant interface should show up in the DAW's audio preferences, where it can be selected as the I/O device for the workstation, instead of using the computer's own built-in audio I/O. But larger audio interfaces are often not plug-and-play or class-compliant. They typically require their own dedicated software device drivers to be installed to be recognized by the OS and DAW. Interfaces that provide features beyond simple I/O need their own driver to take advantage of those additional features. A few larger interfaces, like certain 8x8 models, might show up without the dedicated driver, but without full functionality. You might not even have access to all the ins and outs. Most high-end audio interfaces will need their driver installed to be used at all, and you'd certainly want to take advantage of any advanced features. When an interface comes with its own driver, there's an extra level of due diligence required. That driver needs to be compatible with the current version of the operating system, and that may necessitate a trip to the manufacturer's website and a look at their tech specs to be sure that the device will work on your system. For example, on a Mac, you'd check the system specs to determine the current OS version, and then check the interface specs to confirm compatibility. It also means you'll probably want to turn off any automatic operating system update feature, and before doing even incremental operating system updates, wait a while to see if any problems are reported with your interface's drivers before updating. Many interfaces provide a software utility to set up the interface and to take advantage of extra features. Sometimes these utilities simply let you access controls that didn't fit on the front panel of the hardware, but most of the time they offer access to additional features. Larger interfaces may include routing options in the software utility. For example, interfaces that offer the ability to set up performers' headphone mixes inside the interface usually include a utility with its own virtual mixer for that purpose that'll mix incoming audio signals and tracks from the DAW mixer into a dedicated performer's headphone, or cue, mix. Doing this inside the interface can have some advantages over doing it in the DAW mixer. I'll get into more detail on monitoring in a later video on interface monitoring options. Interfaces that include processing also may have additional setup and control features for that in their software utility. We'll look at DSP interfaces in a later video as well. Of course, in some cases, the controls in the software utility might not really be needed, and it can be left with its default settings, allowing for standard, basic I/O from the interface.